Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Midnight Mass, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Kind of a slower start just for the sake of, introducing a lot of stuff. It doesn't hit you with like all the craziness. I think we're obviously going to get more and more of that as it progresses. This is actually the first of like the Mike Flanagan series. Like I haven't seen any of the Haunting series. I want to, I just haven't taken time out. So this is kind of my first time. So I don't know if like even the Haunting series kind of start off kind of slower like this. But obviously we get introduced to Riley, played by Zach Guilford, which I best know him for as Greg from Good Girls. It is kind of what I thought it was going into the show, like the ghosts he kept seeing, or at least the woman he kept seeing. Not necessarily ghosts, but what's kind of stuck in his head is that imprinted image of the woman he killed in his drunk driving accident. Even the EMT being like, yeah, it sucks that the young ones end up dying, but the drunk douchebags are the one that like just get to live on. Because he's got, like, it's after, it's like, no, she's going to be okay, right? And then when she dies, he starts praying, and it's like, yeah, like, that's kind of sucky how that works. And so he ends up getting sentenced 4 to 10 years. And while he's in prison, we just get that, I guess, first night, and he's kind of reading the Bible, and he's just kind of like, it seems like it's his Bible, like a very older one, because he's even got his mom like who written something in it. And as he's laying there, he can't escape the image of that final image is stuck in his head. I mean, I'm skipping around a little bit. Even like 4 years later, like, of course that still haunts him to this day. Like, it's ingrained in his mind of like, right, I did that. The regrets. And so obviously we're on Crockett Island, the population of 127, slowly getting introduced to other people. We meet Annie, his mom, Ed, his dad, his little brother Warren, which his little brother's kind of going out with his pals, Ochre and Ollie, and they're just kind of like getting high or whatever it is. But they go to that Uppards Island, which I'm like, that's weird. They never, maybe I missed it, like, they never explain, like, why the hell that island's filled with cats. I mean, truth be told, isn't there an island in Japan? Or, like, yeah, I think in general air, near Japan or something like that, that it's like an island full of cats or something like that. I think that's a thing in Japan, too. I could be sorely mistaken, but I was like, all they said was like, yeah, these things come from like the mainland. I'm like, wait, like, do people just like find cats and drop them off, or do they get washed up on that? Like, how the hell is this island just filled with cats? And it's just like more and more, it's like a whole army of them. And so they kind of like, obviously it's like a tradition of kind of coming there to a certain extent, because like Ochre's older brother as well as Warren's older brother Riley would pop in there from, and they made that whole fishman story of like, oh yeah, basically harpoon people and eat their flesh. And then at one point, like, Warren looks, because you can see the cats in the background, which is so creepy seeing their eyes. Sinister yet kind of cool. But like, he looks at one point and he sees something standing up and he freaks out. It's like, what was that? But it's like, yeah, it must be like tripping balls or something. It's like, oh, maybe it's the fisherman or something like that. So luckily nothing happened to them. But like I said, just getting introduced to other people, like the sheriff, who's played by Rahul Kohli, which I was like, because I know he's in Haunting of Bly Manor, but like I said, I haven't seen it. I believe that's the one he's in. But the thing I best know him for is playing Ravi in iZombie. It is a small town thing of like, right, he's arresting it. Like, this seems like the main person he deals with time and time again is Joe. And it is a thing like, it's interesting because like Joe had referenced like, oh, he saw something that was freaking him out, and it looked like something that had like a giant wingspan. I'm like, the fact of the matter is, Ochre swore he saw, I think it was him in particular, was like, oh, he thought he saw like a pelican or something. I was like, man, it had a giant wingspan. I'm like, did they see the same thing or something? That's what it sounded like, but I could be mistaken. But I think that's what he was saying, but it's kind of like, well, you were drunk at the time, so. But we also get introduced to Beverly, which Beverly seems like the, like, oh, I'm better than everyone, like, I know it all type of thing of, like, I'm the one people, like, she's like the person that, like, everyone just kind of goes, okay, Beverly, like, rolls their eyes towards, because she's kind of like the right hand to Monsignor Pruitt, but it seems like she's kind of always kind of like, it's a weird thing to say. Like, her character, just from what we got, it seems like she's kind of a know-it-all nag of just kind of like, I mean, of course you wouldn't know that all like, calling like the sheriff out, because like, of course, like, why would you know that? Because he was suggesting like they like bunkered down at the school for the like coming storm, but then she was like, no, we usually go here, and it's like it can fit like twice as many people. He's like, but that doesn't mean it. And then he's just like, right, you're 100% right, I didn't know anything, Beverly. And she's like, it's okay, like, you're not expecting to know. It's like, it's just like her personality is just kind of like, it kind of rubs you the wrong way. Even Joe was like, oh, like, don't listen to her. When he was talking to his dog, it's like, she's just a meanie, she's mean, she's just a meanie. So I don't know, like, she just definitely got. I thrown this out there when I saw the trailer. I think she's gonna be like the one that, like, I think the word I'm looking for is she seems like the most self-righteous character, and I feel like under the, considering where the show's going to potentially end up going, I'm like, I get the feeling like she's going to be the main crux, the person that's just going to be like leading the charge on just kind of like, oh, like, we're turning neighbor against neighbor type of thing. Like, I think she's going to be leading the charge in certain regards. Like, there's a character, oh god, there's a specific character from like The Mist that was kind of like that. I think she's going to play that role. God, is it Marissa Gay Harden? Is that it? I'm blanking on the actress's name. I think that's her. Was that her in that, or was that someone else? I want to say that was her in that role. But in like the Mist movie, I won't go too much into it, but like she kind of seems like that archetype, But obviously, like, it seems like I was curious about Riley's relationship with his dad, because like the moment like Annie's like, oh, Riley says hi, and it's like, oh, your dad, he just happened to walk out, so I don't think he heard me here. And it's like, yeah. So whether him and his dad had a good relationship beforehand, I think it seems like that, considering like the pictures we saw at the beginning from the Bible that he had. I think they did, but his dad's kind of turned his back on him, because it's like, right, all that you've done. It's just like, they're a very religious family. It seems like everyone on the island is very religious. That's also got to probably be a little odd for the sheriff and his son, because even Beverly was like, right, like, even you can come in just because, like, it was almost like some slight self-righteous shade she was throwing, because it's like, yeah, you might not be like a Catholic or a Christian or whatever, but you can still stop on by if you need to. It's like, it just like it seemed a little condescending, like I said, self-righteous. So it's like, it's got to be weird for them being like the only people like that on the island, where everyone else is a very specific, like, it just ostracizes you just that much more. It's like, cool, we look the way we do, and on top of that, we're the only ones like of our religion. I'd assume I can't make assumptions, because I was gonna say maybe Muslim, but I don't know. But I'm like, I wouldn't, like, that's got to like be a contentious complication in its own right. It's like, I don't think it's that much of an issue to most people, but it's just like, it feels like it's an issue with Beverly. Once again, that could be me reading too much into it, but it just rubs you the wrong way with the way she was kind of, and even just to share, almost kind of be like, yeah, okay about it. It's kind of crazy when Riley does show up. His mom, obviously they have to, like, they're walking through town. I'm like, that kind of sucks, because it's almost like doing the walk of shame, because like, it's like everyone's like, I was like, oh, Sarah's looking out her window and seeing you, and lo and behold, who's with her? None other than Aaron, which they have a very interesting relationship, a past that we really haven't gotten into much, but they kind of reference the fact is that she ran away when she was younger, and at some point she came back, because her mom died last spring. I don't know if that, like, is necessarily like what happened, like her mom died and that made eventually her decide to come back, but like, she ran away when she was like a teenager or something, and she just hasn't been back since. She's back now, and she's pregnant. She was married, but it's like, yeah, that's kind of over. So what I thought was kind of an interesting development is that, because now, like, she was kind of like the rambunctious one, and now it's like she's come back and she's the one that's like more devout to religion, whereas like Riley, because I'd even thought about that when he was like, yeah, that's not my thing anymore. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, most people who go to prison like find religion, and he literally says that line later on. It's like, yeah, that is kind of interesting. I wonder, does that happen a lot to anyone that does go to prison who is religious? Do they end up going more the atheist route? For him, it's like, he threw away the Bible the first night, but it still took a while for it to kind of really kick in, because he looked through the different ones. He read the Quran, he read this, he read that. Like, he read all these different religions trying to find God, and just ended up an atheist. ironic considering like how pretty religious his family is. But the argument could be like, well, you know, the more religious your family is, the more you probably might end up inadvertently. Maybe you could go two sides of it. You could either go full, like, embrace it and be a part of that, or you could end up rebelling and just going on the opposite end of that. It wasn't necessarily that. It seems like he was a religious, but maybe like that's also why like he kind of partied out the way he did. You know, maybe just the lifestyle he was living at the time, or maybe it was simply a byproduct of maybe his upbringing. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, maybe, because I don't know if his family was like super, like, they are religious, but I don't know if like they're super uptight religious, because also like I don't have a proper gauge on that when it comes to like religion and stuff like that, because it's just I get awkward around that conversation because I'm like, I don't know where my personal beliefs lie. So like that's why I'm like, I don't know if I'm the proper gauge of like, it seems like it could be like strictly religious, but at the same time I'm like, that might just be normal. That might not be like strict. That might just be like average level religion, like, you know. So like they might not be like on the like the more stricter like extreme like side of the spectrum, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's just hard for me to gauge. Or it's like, you know, like I was saying, because she even brought up the fact that he used to be an altar boy. Hell, even like when him and his brother were like joking about it at the dinner table, it's like you could tell like the entire time his dad was quiet, but his dad just kept staring at Riley, like he wanted to say something the entire time. And because Riley was like, yeah, I'm not going to go to church, but then like his dad was like, no, like the fact of the matter is you did what you did. Like think of this as kind of like your probation, your parole, like your probation for your parole or whatever. And it's like you're going to church every day. The fact is you got the nerve to kind of sit here and joke about, you know, being, you know, an altar boy, and like the only reason why you did it was for the chicks. It's like, no, like we're not going to have that in my house. And to the point like he just got up. And the thing is, he just doesn't know how to act around Riley, because he's just, later on he's like, right, and he kind of shakes his hand and pats him on the back. It's like, okay, it's like you can tell like the awkwardness of like he doesn't know what to do. And he's kind of trying to respect him to a certain extent. It's like, right, that's not your thing, but it's like your mom like would go to church every day, like whether or not it was a mass or not, she'd take a rosary and kind of pray for you. So it's like you don't have to take part in communion, because obviously it might not feel right for you, and even if you do, like if you're not feeling it, then it would be kind of very done in bad taste if you did it just to do it, you know. And it's like, but it's like at the very least show up, because your mom would want you to do that. Like you almost owe her that much at the very least to show up. You kind of owe it to this family in general to kind of show up in that regard. And he's like, okay, so that ends up being an interesting development, especially when they're doing the communion and everything. Obviously, Monsignor Pruitt was supposed to come back, because there was a whole conversation about like he's older now and he's kind of a little like gets confused and stuff like that. So, but he kind of went on a journey, you know, walk where Jesus walked type of thing, and he was supposed to come back. Even Beverly was looking for him, but he never got on a boat. And so I'm assuming, with the grand scheme of everything, that maybe, just maybe, he was in the trunk that Father Paul had. Who Father Paul is played by is it Hamish Linklater? I know him as originally like New Adventures of Old Christine. He played Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character of Christine. He played her brother. But other than that, I also know him from Legion, and most recently Tell Me Your Secrets. Like, so those are the things I kind of best know him from. But he showed up with a trunk, and there was a large like knock inside the trunk. But when you see the trunk open later on, it looks like it was nothing but it looks like a bunch of dirt. And I'm like, what's up with that? So like, because he was saying like when he shows up, it's like, oh yeah, Monsignor, like the diocese suggested I fill in for a little bit. It's like, don't worry, you're gonna get your pastor back. But it's just like, I'm just running things temporarily, and I'm glad you guys could all show up and be a part of all of this. So he kind of leads the charge and everything. Like I said, the mayor and his wife, their little girl's the one in the wheelchair. Obviously she's pretty, like, I guess, like, maybe Warren, like, we don't know the circumstances around it, but, like, Warren kind of focuses on her a lot, like, even being like, oh, yeah, like, I wish you could kind of, you know, come with us and everything, so, I wonder what's kind of, like, whether, like, there was a thing there before the accident, like, something between them, I mean, or, like, maybe he just never feels right kind of bringing it up now, considering, you know, what she's been through, like, Because we don't know if that's a thing of like she was born that way or whether it seems like it might have been an accident or maybe like was it a medical condition, wasn't an accident, like what led to her circumstances. So we'll find out more as the season progresses. But what I thought was so fascinating too is when Beverly was like, "Oh yeah, you're wearing the gold one, considering the timing and everything. You're supposed to be wearing the green one." He's like, "Oh right, I couldn't find it. Monsignor Paul must have had it somewhere, like at a place I couldn't find it." And she's like, "Well, if you ever need one, like I could just order." He's like, "No, I'll find out. I just have to open up all the closets." I was like, "Are you faking this?" Like, because my thought, with the trailer and everything, it was like, is he, like, supposed to be, like, the devil coming down pretending? Or is he supposed to be, like, just, like, some Joe Schmo that's kind of evil or something? I don't know. But I'm like, the fact is that he mixed that up made me go, like, are you faking this? Like, are you like fake it till you make it? Like, enough, like, you pass off, this mysterious stranger coming to town playing the role of like, oh yeah, like I'm the father filling the role, but it's like maybe he's only kind of flying by the seat of his pants. He knows enough just to get by, but that little mix up kind of, and I think for him it's like, all right, Beverly's gonna be one to keep an eye on, because he's like, right, not many people notice, because he also because even Annie and Ed were talking about like what he did. It's like, oh, they're like, yeah, like the fact is he did like an older version of it. He's like, right, like I know this specific version of it, it's a little closer to the Latin, but it's like the fact, so like those little key things made me go like, either we're gonna find out that he's like older than what he appears to be, that he's someone or rather something else, maybe, or maybe he's just someone evil, just not necessarily something supernatural, but I'd assume so with the nature of everything, but he might just, he's something or someone playing a role. It feels like that's what they're potentially setting up, but we'll see. But I think he's definitely going to feel the need to be more on his toes around Beverly, because she's the one that notices a lot more, has a lot more issues, because no one else says anything. But like I said, like Annie and Ed said what they said, but that wasn't enough of an issue. Like what Beverly brought up was kind of more of oh yeah, she'll be more on top of those things, because it seems like she will. She's like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. I'm gonna be your helper. So it's like he's like probably thinking like, all right, I'm gonna keep an eye on her because she's gonna be all up in my business. Because obviously, like when he was rolling, because she thought he was the Monsignor at first with all that stuff scattered around, she was like looking around the trunk, so he made sure to show up just in time to get her to back away. So, but even like his it's just him being friendly, but like I said, it rubs you the wrong way of just kind of like him being like, yeah, like I'm, because like the mayor was talking about it being like a melting pot here and stuff like that, and it's like he's doing everything he can. It's almost just kind of like it feels like he's performing to like fit in. Like it rubs me the wrong way. It just not rubs me the wrong way, but it feels off. Like I said, it feels performative. So we'll kind of have to wait and see on that front. But we got a lot of interesting insight into Riley's circumstances when he was walking and talking with Erin. Like I said, like we found out her circumstances of like she went to New York, and because I can tell you there was all those rumors. He was like, yeah, when we were younger there was all those rumors. Most of them ended with like you going to Hollywood and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, that was one of my theories. But she was kind of all over the place, and she also does a very good job of avoiding like certain aspects of that subject. But she asked ultimately, like, I was like, how are you? And he's like, oh, I'm getting mad. She's like, no, like, how are you? And he's like, honestly, I don't know. At least in prison, it's like, there was a routine, it was just kind of like, you eat, sleep, this, that, like, it was just, there was a routine to a certain extent, but now that he's out, it's like, what am I going to do? Get a job? Like, that's not really going to be an easy thing. Like, how do I live my life? Because for him, he feels like, at least in prison, there was like he could count down the days of the sentence and stuff like that. It'd be part of his routine. But now that he's out and free, it's like, I what's my place in this? He's like, I don't have a purpose. He's like, it's just like I'm just going to be at my parents' house. I'm just living, And for him, that's the worst part of it. He's like, I shouldn't be alive. I don't know whether it's a thing of like, right, that girl died, I should have died too, or at the very least, she should have lived, I should have been the one that died. Like, that's also what leads to him, like, I think, trying to find God, because it's like, what I think for him, it's like, it could be answered just simply as like, if there's such a thing as a God, like, if there is God, then why would he do something as terrible as, I'm the one that screwed up, yet I get spared, and this innocent girl is dead. Like, that's why he won't forgive himself, because it's like, he needs to drown in the guilt. We even had, like, those moments of we see him kind of out in the water, in a rowboat, and then, like, it shift over to the church. So, like, are those, like, some subtle visions that he's seeing, and he's just interpreting them as dreams, or, like, nightmares, or whatever? Like, has he been seeing that over and over again for the past 4 years, like he has the girl Tara, or is that something new since coming back home, like those other elements? Like, obviously we know he's been seeing Tara probably past 4 years, so because he hasn't forgiven himself. It's like, right, I think he doesn't want to forgive himself. It's like, if I'm going to live, I'm going to drown in that guilt. That's the only penance I can really make for what I did, you know. So but on the upwards, we do get a real quick look at like some deceased cats. One just kind of ripped to shreds, and another one gets grabbed, and we hear some, you know, like some chomping sounds. It's just kind of like that cat's getting eaten by something. And so, obviously, during the heat of the storm, you know, everyone's dealing with their things. Sarah's trying to take care of her mother, who's kind of older and kind of confused now. You also have Riley looking out the window and thinking he sees the Monsignor Pruitt, because he's like, yeah, that looks like him. And that's why I was saying, like, was he in the trunk the entire time, and did Paul let him go because, like, oh, I could use this as a perfect excuse? Like, yeah, let him get confused out there in a storm and he's going to get killed. Like, you know, it's the storm, people are boarded up, no one's going outside, so no one's going to notice if he disappears or something. So that was my immediate thought. Riley ran out there because no one else saw him, but he sees a Monsignor. But like when he's calling out a Monsignor, like he runs away from him because I guess like maybe he's in a frightened, he's confused, but on top of that he's frightened because, like I said, if Paul had him captured this entire time. But when Riley kept going, it's like the Monsignor kind of disappeared. And so when the storm does pass, they go outside, you know, want to check on everything, want to check to see like if it really was the Monsignor. But then on the beach, which Warren had brought up at the beginning of the episode, like a lot of stuff, it's like, right, like he was suggesting that all the cats on this island survived by survived by eating the bodies, but it's like, no, the bodies that like are buried on that island that wash up on their shore, he's like, Warren was like, they're bones because they're been like 100 years old, so like there's no like flesh on them, so like so that's why I know like what Oker's saying is BS essentially. But it's like what ends up washing up on shore is a whole bunch of cats. Now what we see is that one of them is the orange cat we saw get God, and its neck is kind of slit. So the question then becomes, whatever was on that island, the storm swept up and washed it ashore, or is that supposed to like you know? So it's like, are all those dead bodies washed ashore? Like, are some of the, because it didn't look like none of, at least from what we saw, that orange cat seemed like to be the only injured one. The rest of them just seemed like regular cats. So I guess that's kind of implying like maybe all the other cats that got washed up from the island and drowned. Not unless those are all the other dead cats that were eaten. Like, but they didn't seem as like in bad enough condition. At least from what I saw, I could have missed the details in that, but it just seemed like the orange cat in particular was the one that was eaten. So I'm assuming, like I said, like maybe that thing that was off the island, whatever it is, washed up and found its way here. Maybe that was what Riley actually saw and not the Monsignor. I mean, maybe the Monsignor was sent to that island to be devoured by this thing, or maybe he is that thing. So many like random theories kind of going out. It's just the first episode. Obviously, like with the religious motif of it all, this episode being called Genesis, the beginning of everything. So that how very befitting. But yeah, like I am doing with all things that get dropped all at once. I am watching this one episode at a time. So far I've only seen the first episode. So there's a lot of episodes to prove/disprove any like random theories I've kind of thrown, to stick to the wall. But I'm really interested so far. Like I said, it's kind of a slow burn of a start, but I think just based on what we've seen from the trailer, I think there's it's going to pick up quickly enough as things kind of like build up and we kind of try and find out like what's going on. We've only just taken the first few steps, so you're not going to get all the answers immediately, obviously. But I'm really excited to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Oh yeah, once again, before I end this too, like always, I am going to try and drop these all at once, so these will go up within like 15 minutes of each other. I'm not going to promise a day just because I don't know when I'm going to get around to be able to watch everything and record these reviews and everything. But regardless, whenever this goes up, the others should be up as well within like 15 minutes of each other. I usually try to do that, but yeah. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.